I used to think silence kept the peace. Now I know it only protects the ones who hurt you most. The message came at 3:12 p.m. My phone buzzed once, then again. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and picked it up off the counter. It was from my daughter, but the words, they weren't hers. If you're coming to the party, bring a gift, a good one. No greeting, no "Hey Dad," no smiley face like she used to send before he came into the picture. Just those 9 words, sterile, transactional, like I was some stranger expected to pay admission to his own daughter's home. I read it 3 times. The worst part, I wasn't surprised. I put the phone down gently. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Everything I needed to know was in that message. I walked over to the photo shelf. There she was, age 6, icing all over her cheeks, beaming at the cake I made her with trembling hands. Back when she used to call me her hero. Now I'm just a line item, a possible wallet. I sat down at the kitchen table, same chair I'd sat in since my wife passed. I remembered her voice that day, soft but firm. "Frank, don't let them take pieces of you just because you love them." I didn't listen. Not then. Not when they asked for help with the down payment. Not when he convinced her to put the house in her name for tax reasons. Not when they stopped inviting me for holidays unless I brought something in my hands. Love makes fools of the strong. I guess I'm living proof. That night I didn't turn the lights on, just sat in the dark. I heard the refrigerator hum, the wind whistle through the siding. My hands felt foreign, dry, old. A part of me wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. I picked up the phone again, stared at the message. And then, without thinking, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. It stuck a little, as it always did. Inside was the envelope, yellowed at the corners, my name, their name, the deed. Half mine still. I'd kept it all these years, out of sentiment. Or maybe because some part of me, the part that never stopped looking out for her, knew this day would come. I put the envelope on the table, smoothed it out, sat back and stared at it for a long while. "If anyone's listening," I murmured, "don't make the mistake I did. Don't love so loud you forget to listen to silence." I looked around the house. Every creak and chip held a memory, but not all memories are worth preserving. That message, it didn't just close a door. It opened something else. A slow, quiet ache that felt suspiciously like resolve. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I just watched the shadows crawl across the floor until the sun finally cut them clean. I used to believe showing up was enough, but presence means nothing when people have already erased you. I stood on the porch for a full minute before knocking. The wine bottle felt heavier than it should have, maybe because I knew it wouldn't be enough. Not for him. Never for him. The door opened and my daughter smiled, a quick, brittle thing. "Dad," she said, voice flat. No hug, just a glance over my shoulder like she was checking if I came alone. "I brought red," I said, lifting the bottle. She nodded and took it without a word. No thank you, no come in. Just turned and walked back into the noise. The house was full. Laughter, clinking glasses, that expensive fake jazz he always plays when he wants to impress people. I stepped inside and wiped my shoes on the mat. Nobody noticed. I stood for a while by the coat rack, holding my jacket. I didn't want to put it down, didn't want to stay long. He came over eventually, my son-in-law, wearing that smug little half-smile. "You made it," he said, not even pretending it was sincere. "Wouldn't miss it," I answered. It was a lie. I'd almost stayed home. He nodded toward the dining table. "Help yourself." To what, I wasn't sure. There was no seat for me, no name card, no plate, just platters half picked over and people who looked through me like I was part of the wallpaper. I wandered into the kitchen. That's when I saw the new cabinets. Shiny, custom-built oak, the kind my wife and I had once saved for but never bought. "They look nice," I said aloud, mostly to myself. "Oh, thanks," my daughter replied, finally appearing beside me. "We got them done last month." Last month and no one told me. No call, no visit, no "Hey Dad, come see." Must have cost a fortune, I said, trying not to sound bitter. She shrugged. We had some help. I blinked. Help. Mike's parents chipped in, she said. And well, some of the savings from the wedding gift. The wedding gift. The $20,000 I gave them the night before the ceremony. From my retirement. From the account my wife and I built for travel we never took. I see, I said quietly. Dad, don't be weird, she said, already distracted. It's just a party. I looked at her, really looked, and realized I didn't recognize her anymore. My grandson found me later near the hallway. He hugged my leg without saying anything. I placed my hand on his head. You doing okay? I whispered. He nodded, then ran off. That was the only warmth I got all night. No one asked me how I was doing, not once. By the time dessert came, I was already outside, walking. Jacket thin against the cold, shoes stiff. I didn't ask for a ride. I didn't want their car. I needed the distance. 2 miles later, I was home, my fingers numb, my pride thinner. I unlocked the safe and took out the deed papers, sat on the edge of my bed and reread every word slowly. My name was still there. They forgot that part. But I didn't. You don't notice when something becomes sacred, not until someone decides it no longer matters. I hadn't planned to visit. I was in the neighborhood, if that counts for anything. Maybe part of me just wanted to see if the wine bottle was ever opened. Or maybe I was chasing something I already knew didn't exist anymore. I knocked, then let myself in. The spare key was still under the flower pot, though the flowers were dead. Dad, my daughter called from the kitchen. You should have told us you were coming. I won't stay long, I said. Her husband appeared behind her, wiping his hands on a towel. We're in the middle of repainting the upstairs. It's not a great time. I nodded and stepped into the living room. That's when I saw the empty space. Where my chair had been, the high-backed, faded green armchair with the frayed armrest I used to rub when I was thinking. There was nothing. No replacement, just an empty patch of polished wood. I stared at the absence like it had weight. Where's the chair? I asked, already knowing. He stepped in behind me. We're modernizing, it didn't match the aesthetic. It was my chair, I said softly. He laughed under his breath. It was a bit of an eyesore, Frank. My daughter came in holding her phone like a shield. We donated it. There wasn't space with the new layout. I looked around. They shifted the furniture. Replaced the rug. The walls were lighter, colder. Everything smelled like fresh paint and lemon cleaner, no trace of the home I once helped build. I used to sit there, I said mostly to myself. Every visit, every Christmas. No one replied. No one asked me to sit now either. I stood awkwardly, unsure where to put my hands. You want tea? My daughter asked, her voice already drifting toward the hallway. I shook my head. I'll be on my way. Neither of them followed me to the door. I slipped on my coat slowly, waiting, I don't know, for someone to say something real. That's when I heard it, his voice, low but not low enough. He won't be around much longer anyway. I froze, my fingers clenched around the doorknob. Silence followed, no gasp, no correction, just air. I turned slightly. My daughter stood near the stairwell. She didn't meet my eyes, didn't say a word. I opened the door and stepped out. The walk to my car felt longer than usual. At home, I sat on the edge of my bed and opened the safe. Not out of anger, not even revenge, just clarity. I pulled out the original purchase contract, our names side by side, and behind it, tucked like a memory I'd meant to forget, the old will. My lawyer's number was still on the envelope. I hadn't spoken to Helen in 5 years. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I picked up the phone and dialed. She answered on the second ring. Some people speak justice like thunder, not loud, but with pressure you feel in your bones. Helen opened the door before I even knocked. "Frank," she said, and that was it. No small talk, no smile, just the name heavy with memory. Her office looked the same. Walnut shelves, framed degrees, a plant that somehow outlived all of us. "Sit down," she said. "You look like you've been chewing gravel." "Worse," I muttered, easing into the leather chair across from her desk. My hands shook slightly as I reached into my coat and slid the manila envelope forward. She didn't touch it immediately, just waited, let the silence hang like an old friend. "I didn't call because I wanted revenge," I said finally. "I called because I remembered who I used to be." She nodded once, then opened the envelope. Papers shifted under her fingers like cards being dealt. The deed, the purchase contract, the will faded but intact. She read in silence. Her eyes didn't move fast. She wasn't scanning, she was remembering. When she looked up, there was no pity in her expression, just something firmer, a quiet kind of justice. "They never finished the transfer," she said. "You're still legally listed as a co-owner." I exhaled, even after all these years. "They used you for the down payment, then left your name on the deed. Probably didn't even realize what that meant." I leaned back, "And if I wanted to sell my half?" Her brow rose just slightly. "You'd have every right, and depending on how it's structured, you might be able to sell the whole thing." I said nothing. Helen leaned forward, folding her hands. "Frank, I know that look. You're not here for revenge. You're here because something broke." "Not something," I said, "someone." She softened but didn't offer comfort. That's not who Helen was. Instead, she said, "Then let's talk options." We reviewed the terms, ownership rights, partition sales, legal precedent. She never raised her voice, never dramatized it. But with every word, I felt like she was handing me back something I hadn't realized was mine. Control, dignity, fire. "You always said you'd die in that chair," she said, nodding toward the will. "They donated it," I replied. She looked at me for a long time. "Then maybe it's time they learn what it cost." I left with the documents tucked under my coat. The air outside was sharp, biting. I didn't rush, didn't limp, just walked. And as I passed the bakery we used to visit after appointments, I saw our reflection in the glass, hers behind me, strong as ever, and mine older, but no longer small. I didn't feel old, I felt exact. The weight in my coat wasn't paper, it was permission, the kind you wait decades to give yourself. And I was finally ready to carry it. Some people walk into a house and see furniture, others see truth hiding in the walls. Elise arrived 10 minutes early. That alone told me she wasn't the type to waste time. She stepped out of a simple black sedan, clipboard in hand, hair tied back. No heels, no fake charm, just presence. "You must be Frank," she said, extending her hand. Her grip was firm, respectful. "Helen said you had something delicate." I unlocked the gate and nodded toward the front porch. "Come inside." We didn't use the main door. I still had the back key, hidden behind the old brick under the lilac bush. They never thought to change it. Inside, it smelled like new paint and ignorance, the kind of clean that only comes from trying to cover something up. Elise paused in the hallway, taking it all in. She didn't rush. Her eyes lingered on the stairwell, the crown molding, the faint dent near the entryway banister, the one my daughter made when she fell carrying laundry at 12. "This place has history," she murmured. "Especially the east light, it's got soul." I watched her step into the living room. Her foot landed right where my chair used to be. "I sat there," I said, "every Sunday, same spot for 15 years. She didn't respond right away, just nodded as if absorbing more than the room. "They removed the chair," I added. She turned. "Then I assume we're not selling to family." "No," I said, "we're selling from family." We sat at the breakfast bar, the one I installed with my own hands before her husband had ever even met her. I laid out the documents, co-ownership papers, title, property rights. Helen had labeled everything neatly. Elise flipped through them with clinical grace. No raised eyebrows, no awkward questions, just a pen scratching lightly at the corners for notes. "I take it they don't know?" she asked. "They will not yet. Then we'll keep it confidential. No sign in the yard, no public listing. We'll go soft market until escrow's secured." I studied her. "You've done this before." She smiled faintly. "Transition properties, family complications. It's part of the work. Sometimes the cleanest exits are the quietest." I wanted to ask why she cared, but I didn't need to. She had that look, like someone who'd been erased before and decided never to let it happen again. "I need to know they won't be hurt," I said finally. She looked up. "You're still protecting them." "No, just not trying to destroy them." Elise leaned forward, voice low but steady. "Selling your half isn't destruction, it's correction." For the first time in weeks, I slept through the night. No bad dreams, no gnawing guilt. Just stillness. Outside the leaves were turning. Inside I was too. They thought they'd won, decorated their home, remodeled their space, laughed behind my back. Over floors I once scrubbed with my wife on our knees. They had no idea that house, their kingdom of mockery, had just been listed. And the crown was never theirs to begin with. Some things aren't meant to be rebuilt, only reclaimed. We picked a Thursday. They'd both be at work and the boy was at school. Elise arrived in a quiet car with tinted windows and a small folder tucked under her arm. No real estate flash, just purpose. "I brought shoe covers," she said with a nod. "They won't notice," I muttered, unlocking the back door. The kitchen greeted us with the same sterile cold. Stainless steel, granite counters, not a single item out of place. The kind of cleanliness that isn't lived in, only performed. Elise walked with slow, measured steps. She didn't ask about upgrades or amenities. Her eyes weren't hunting value, they were listening to what the walls remembered. She paused by the fireplace, ran her hand along the stone ledge like she was brushing off time itself. "This isn't about finishes," she said. "It's the bones I care about." I nodded. "They covered the brick with that white paint last year, said the original was too rustic." Elise tilted her head. "They erased character." We moved into the living room. I stepped instinctively to the empty space where my chair had once sat. My body still remembered the angle, the lean, the way the sun would hit around 3 p.m. and warm my knees. I stood in that silence, staring down at the polished wood. Elise turned, watching me. "Was this yours?" "It was." She didn't fill the pause. "I used to hold my grandson here when he was too small to stand. Read to him from a book my wife kept in the drawer. They tossed the drawer with the chair." Still she said nothing, but something shifted in her expression, not pity, just knowing. We walked the rest of the house. She took a photo of a crack in the molding, not for the report, just as a marker of the house's age, a flaw worth remembering. In the upstairs hall, she opened the linen closet and paused. "Do you know what this smells like?" she asked. I shook my head. "Control." I followed her back downstairs. In the dining room, she paused to look out the east-facing window. The sun had dipped slightly, throwing long fingers of light across the floor. She didn't comment, just let it settle. We returned to the kitchen. She tapped her notes once softly, then closed the folder. "It's ready," she said. "For what?" "For peace, for someone to love it without trying to silence it." As we stepped outside, Elise reached the door and turned back, scanning the room one last time. "They don't deserve this place," she said. I looked at her, my jaw tensed, but I didn't speak. Some truths don't need agreement, only acknowledgement. And in that moment I realized this home wasn't theirs to lose. It was mine to let go of. Guilt has a sound. It stutters in the throat and clinks nervously against wine glasses. She called on a Tuesday. Her voice was too light, too rehearsed. "Hey, Dad, we've been meaning to have you over. It's been too long." I didn't ask why now, didn't mention the lawyer, didn't say I knew about the title search. I just said, "All right, what time?" "7," she said. "We'll make steak your favorite." I said nothing. She filled the silence with, "It's time we reconnected. Things have felt weird." Weird, that's the word she chose for betrayal. At 6:58 p.m., I stood at their door. My coat was heavier than usual. The manila envelope rested inside the inner pocket, tucked behind my wallet like a second spine. She opened the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her hug was fast and shallow, like she didn't want to smudge her makeup. The dining table was set for three: cloth napkins, real candles, a bottle of red wine I once gifted them unopened. "We're glad you came," she said, leading me in. He was already seated at the head, carving into the steak. "Still like it medium rare, Frank?" he asked, as if we were old friends. "Still do," I said. They served me like royalty. My daughter poured my glass first. He complimented my sweater. She asked about my knees. None of it felt real. "So," she started after the second toast, "we've been talking about the past, about how we may have drifted." "Drifted," I repeated. She nodded quickly. "I miss how things used to be." He chimed in. "We let money get in the way of family, but we're working on that." I watched them, studied their eyes. He kept glancing at his phone face down on the table. She wouldn't meet my gaze for more than 3 seconds. "Tell me," I said, slicing into the steak, "what brought all this on?" They both hesitated. She finally answered, voice brittle. "We just realized we hadn't checked in. We love you, Dad." That word love came too easily, like a coat she'd found in someone else's closet. They served dessert, creme brulee, store-bought but torched at home for effect. The moment the spoons hit the plates, I reached into my coat and pulled out the envelope. I placed it in the center of the table, between the candles and the fake smiles. He looked at it like it was ticking. "What's this?" he asked. I took a sip of wine, a gift. His eyes narrowed. "We didn't ask for anything." "No," I said, "but last time I came empty-handed, it caused some confusion." My daughter touched the envelope. "Dad." "Open it," I said. "I think you'll find it clarifying." He snatched it instead, tore it open like it owed him money. His face drained as he read. His hands trembled. My daughter leaned over his shoulder, scanning the papers. Co-ownership confirmation, pending sale documents, buyer approval, legal verification. They looked up, twin expressions of stunned betrayal. But only one of us had ever been betrayed. "Frank," she whispered, "what is this?" I stood slowly, smoothing my coat. "It's the seat I was never offered, and I'm finally taking it back." Some betrayals shout. Others whisper through paperwork you never thought you'd have to sign. My daughter unfolded the letter with both hands like it might shatter. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, but from the realization that something irreversible had finally crossed the line. This is a sale agreement," she whispered, eyes darting across the page. "You sold it." Her voice cracked on the last word. He didn't wait. My son-in-law yanked the document from her grip, scanned it like he was looking for a loophole in a sentence. "You're joking," he snapped. "You can't do this." "I can," I said, and I did. His eyes moved faster now, trying to stay ahead of the panic building in his chest. He flipped to the second page. That's when he saw it, Elise's signature. My lawyer's seal, the escrow timeline, the 30-day legal notice. "You're evicting us," he shouted, standing, "from our own house." "It was never yours," I said, calm as winter. "It was ours, but you forgot the ours part." My daughter stared at me, not with rage, not even grief. Just that hollow expression you get when a lie you've lived inside begins to crumble around you. "I thought you wanted us to have it," she said quietly. "I did," I replied. until you turned it into a stage for your cruelty. Dad, you stripped my name from holidays, took my chair, my space, my voice. You gave me silence and called it love. He slammed his hand on the table. You don't get to play the victim now. We let you be part of this house out of respect. I laughed once, dry, hollow. You let me be part of a house I still legally owned. He paced behind her now, muttering to himself, the panic finally settling in his shoulders. We'll fight this. We'll get a lawyer. Please do, I said. I'll send you Helen's number. My daughter sank slowly into a chair, the letter still in her lap. This wasn't supposed to happen, she murmured. No, I said. It was supposed to happen the moment you made me invisible in my own home. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. She just looked at me like someone waking up in a stranger's bed and trying to remember how they got there. You could have talked to us, she whispered. I did, I said. You just stopped listening. He stood frozen, the contract now limp in his hand. You've ruined everything, he said. No, I replied, taking my coat from the chair. I've reclaimed what you forgot was mine. They didn't follow me to the door. I stepped out into the cool night, the wind brushing against my face like a balm. Behind me, the silence in that house wasn't grief. It was consequence. They turned me into a stranger in my own home. Now I'd done the same to them. Justice doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it just shows up with a clipboard and a key. The sign went up on a Tuesday morning. Elise had it printed professionally, private viewing by appointment only. No flashy logos, just enough to get the neighborhood talking. By noon, the whispers had already started. Mrs. Carmichael from 2 doors down peeked from behind her hydrangeas. The old man with the leaf blower paused longer than usual near the curb. And the HOA president, the one who used to ignore my presence entirely, gave me a wave that almost bordered on friendly. I nodded back but didn't smile. My energy wasn't in performance anymore. Elise arrived in her usual way, quiet, punctual, no wasted motion. She stepped out with a binder in hand, and that expression that meant business was about to be done. Inside, I could see the curtains twitch. My daughter, watching from the dining room window, barely moved. Her silhouette was still, heavy. The first buyer walked through around 1 p.m., then a second at 3. Elise showed them around like she'd lived there all her life. She pointed to the hardwood floors they'd once bragged about, the cabinets they'd installed using my wedding gift, the fireplace they'd painted white. She didn't sell it like a house. She sold it like a place waiting to be healed. I stood on the sidewalk for most of the day, didn't interfere, didn't glare. I wasn't there for spite, I was there for presence. Around 4:15, a small hand pressed against the upstairs window. My grandson. His eyes found mine immediately. I raised my hand and waved once. He waved back, small, hesitant, but it was there. No anger, no guilt, just something that hadn't been poisoned yet. Behind him, the curtain snapped shut. The next day, the truck pulled up. Big, beige, unmarked. The kind you rent when the future is uncertain. I arrived early, parked across the street with my coffee, watched as movers carried out boxes, one after another. My daughter tried not to look at me. My son-in-law didn't bother pretending. He stormed past me, dragging a suitcase and muttering loud enough to be heard. This isn't over, I'll make sure of it. I took another sip, good luck with that. He scoffed, disappeared inside. I didn't follow. By mid-afternoon, the house was empty, not just of things but of weight. Elise walked up the path with a key in her hand and peace in her stride. No flourish, no ceremony, just a quiet kind of victory. I stepped forward and held the door open for her. She looked at me, not with triumph, just understanding. "Welcome home," I said. And for the first time in years, I meant it. Some places don't forget. They just wait for you to remember who you were. It had been 3 weeks since I last saw the house. No calls, no emails, no drama, just silence, the kind I could finally trust. I parked across the street and stared at it for a moment. Same shutters, same ivy creeping up the gutter, but something in the air felt lighter, like the house had taken a deep breath and finally let it out. Elise saw me through the window and waved me in. No appointment, no formality, just a nod that said you belong here too. I stepped through the door. The smell had changed. No more synthetic candles or lemon cleaner, just wood, earth, and something faintly floral, lilac maybe. She must have planted something new. "Come in," she said, motioning toward the living room. I followed. Everything was arranged differently. The couch had been moved. The curtains were open. My old chair wasn't back, but that was all right. Some absences are sacred. Then I saw it. On the mantel above the fireplace, in a simple wooden frame, sat a black and white photograph. A little dusty at the corners, the kind of age you can't fake. It was me and her. The photo had been taken the week before I deployed, both of us in uniform, standing straight, shoulders touching. Her eyes were bright. Mine were too, though I hadn't known it then. "I found it behind the old mirror," Elise said, her voice low. "Wrapped in newspaper, tucked between the studs." I swallowed. "I'd forgotten all about it," I said. "We hid things everywhere back then." She didn't respond, didn't need to. I stepped forward, eyes locked on the image. My hand rose instinctively, but I didn't touch the glass. I didn't want to leave fingerprints on something that had waited this long to breathe. "She's beautiful," Elise said. "She was everything," I replied. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was reverent, the kind of stillness reserved for churches and memory. "I wasn't sure you'd want it," she said gently, "but I figured maybe the house did." I smiled, small, honest. "She'd like that," I said. "She always said this place had more heart than people gave it credit for." We stood there, two people connected by nothing more than a house and a photograph. And somehow, that felt like enough. "I'm not here to linger," I added. "Just wanted to see it one more time, as it should have been." Elise nodded. "It's safe now." I turned to leave, pausing at the door. Outside, the wind had picked up. Leaves swirled across the porch like they were chasing something forgotten. I didn't feel anger anymore, or grief, or shame. Just stillness, presence. A house I once built, a family that forgot, a chair that never came back, and a photo that waited in silence for someone to look again. I had brought my final gift, and taken back my dignity.